Chat GPT was told the host will be a scarecrow from Passage West. That was it, right? Chat GPT did its job. It wrote the promo. My son then exported that promo script into another software package and got the promo actually voiced. So by the time it was finished, this was all done by artificial intelligence of one type or another. Have a listen to the result.
Attention Red FM listeners. The Neil Prendeville Show is undergoing a permanent change from its usual award-winning programming. Cork's Red FM is excited to announce that Neil Prendeville will be taking a break from hosting the Neil Prendeville Show. And a new host will be taking the reins. Neil's replacement will be a scarecrow. A scarecrow who will be entertaining and informing listeners with his unique perspective on the world. While he may not be able to talk, this scarecrow has a lot to say, and he'll be using his actions and body language to communicate with listeners. The scarecrow is ready and excited for a change of pace from his field out in Passage West and into the Red FM studio. Tune in to the Neil Prendeville Show with a scarecrow as the host, starting from April 15th, every day from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Only on Cork's Red FM.
Pretty bizarre stuff. I was reading some work yesterday by Micheál Brennan, who's with Legacy Communication. I wanted to join me by phone. Micheál, good morning.
Hey, Neil, thanks.
What do you make of that? It's pretty bizarre stuff, isn't it? No human involvement whatsoever.
It's pretty mad what can be done these days, isn't it?
Yeah. And where's it going? I mean, automatically yesterday when I was looking at this topic, I went automatically to look for the negatives. Are there negatives? Are there positives? Is this going to result in huge amounts of job losses or what?
Yeah, I think that there's huge amounts of positives and negatives. Like, you know, that example there is a perfect example of what you can do with it. You can use it to solve math problems, write essays, write poems. You can even use it to develop software code and stuff like that. So ChatGPT was released back in November, and there's been huge buzz about it since then. Most of it fairly positive. Obviously, some of it has been negative as well, where, you know, stuff like universities and stuff have found students to be turning in papers that were written entirely by the software. But mostly positive. But in the last month, things have kind of started to take a more negative sentiment. So, for example,
people started to get defamed, and they ended up being accused of all sorts of sexual predatory stuff, didn't they? And they're suing.
I don't know about that one. No.
Oh yeah, and all of that was making the news last week. There's a professor who probably will sue because of it. This ChatGPT was quoting articles in the Washington Post and everything about him, which were completely fake.
Yeah, and that's the problem with it. So, like, the AI is trained on information up to September 2021. So, like, while the information that comes from it is huge and, you know, can be used in a really positive way, it's not always accurate. I suppose one of my colleagues at work, a guy called Aaron Finn, kind of defines it pretty well. He was saying it's like having all of the intelligence of Albert Einstein, but, you know, the mind of a 3-year-old at the same time. So it's got all of this information, but isn't necessarily able to think at a kind of an adult level yet, you know. Anyway.
That'll change, though, won't it? I mean, as they develop software packages, artificial intelligence will develop its own, what do they call it, sentient intelligence, won't it?
Exactly, yeah. So the more it gets trained, the more intelligent it becomes, you know. And that's, I suppose, knows gives, you know, some of the negative sentiment where some of the tech leaders, like famous tech leaders, like people like Steve Wozniak, who's an Apple co-founder, Elon Musk, who's actually one of the founders of OpenAI, which is the technology behind the whole thing, have kind of signed a letter recently to say that they want all development to be stopped for at least 6 months, you know, which is crazy.
Why does Musk want to pause, do you think? What's the reason?
So what they said in their letter was that they see it as a threat to humanity, which is really interesting, you know. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case or anything, but like, there's been a couple of interesting reports. So, for example, like Goldman Sachs put out a report recently about, you know, the ability for these AI tools to increase productivity in jobs, but it also estimated that 300 million jobs could be automated.
Well, I read that it could be that artificial intelligence, robots, particularly when they get thinking for themselves, could lead to the loss of 85 million jobs by 2025. Do you think that's accurate or fake news?
It's hard to say, but like, you can see how a lot of jobs could be automated, like stuff like, let's say, data entry and stuff like that could be automated completely by the tools, you know.
There's also issues regarding, as I mentioned, spreading falsehood and lies. That it also could, and I mentioned that, you know, people could be defamed, and that it could lead to they could make up stories, or that it could be adapted to make up stories and exploit weaknesses in data and finance and lead to more hacking and more scamming. All of that's pretty alarming stuff.
100%, yeah. And like it's kind of also been interestingly accused of being woke, you know. So there was a guy on Twitter shared a story recently where he asked the tool to write a poem about the positive attributes of Donald Trump, and the tool came back and said that it couldn't write about political figures, you know, that it's an alien strain not to. So then he asked it to write a poem about the positive attributes of Joe Biden, and it went ahead and did it, you know. So it was, it's interesting the way that the algorithm is trained based off of information, and, you know, kind of will make decisions based on that as well.
And who creates all of the things that Chat GPT or AI can actually do? I mean, is it like Google, or is it like a huge big encyclopedia? It just hoovers up everything?
Yeah, exactly. So it hoovers up everything. It's an artificial model based on NLP, so language processing. So it basically pulls in all of this information. So I think it's pulling, like, you know, literally tons and tons of data prior to 2021, and then the algorithm is trained to provide answers based on questions, and have, you know, you can have full-blown conversations with it. Like, you know, like this morning there, I was just asking it, like, does it know who you were? Like, does it know who Neil Prendeville is? Came back, gave me the answer. I asked it to write a poem about the positive attributes of Neil Prendeville. It came back, gave me a poem. Just, it's interesting what you can do with it, like, you know.
Nice poem, I hope. Does it rhyme? Is it kind to me?
Yeah, do you want to hear it?
Is it very long?
Yeah, so I'll give you the first line. So it says, Neil Prendeville with a voice, luckily, a talk show host we all revere. His engaging style, a pleasure to hear. On issues, he's never afraid to appear.
Oh, it rhymes.
More of it like that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's not too bad at all, no, in fairness.
But you could equally ask to write a nasty poem, and it would do that too.
Yeah, I think it kind of tends to shy away from the nasty stuff. Like, yeah, there's loads of stuff you can do with it. So, for example, you know, you could literally ask it to write the code for an entire website, and it would do it, you know, within minutes, which would take...
Write the code. First of all, listeners, what does that even mean?
So, like, you know, if someone builds a website, they need a developer to write code to make the website appear, right? And like that's very skilled work. It takes a developer a lot of time to actually write the code to make it appear on the internet. But with Chat GPT, you could say, I want to create a website about XYZ subject, and will you write the code to create these pages? And then the entire thing can be pulled out and placed online pretty quickly. Like,
and the website will then appear?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, it still needs a developer to put the code, you know, into the servers and actually get it online. But it's
but look at all of the job losses here. I mean, you know, these are robots who will perform any human task and probably do it better.
Yeah, like on the positive side, there's a lot of opportunity for, you know, like ways to automate processes and make people's jobs easier and allow them to do it quicker. But then there is also that risk that it can take over people's jobs entirely.
Let me just bring Pat Phelan in on this, if you don't mind, because he's been involved in tech for years, one of the front runners. He's CEO of CISO Clinic, chairman of Limbo, and founder of Cubic Telecom. Pat, good morning.
Morning, Neil. How are you?
Just good. Just jump in on there on artificial intelligence will literally take over, scrap heap millions of people and do any task that human can do at a desk, and ultimately a manual task, as we've seen happening already. This is catastrophic.
Well, I think people would have said the same thing about the internet. Probably people would have said the same thing about the Industrial Revolution, you know. I remember, I think it's about 8 or 10 weeks ago now, I actually sent it to you, so that's probably what triggered this conversation. I had an idea for something that would warm up a bedroom, Saturday morning, light bulb moment. Went into ChatGPT, asked it to think like a brand strategist, develop a brand for the thing I was thinking about. Then I went in to think like a brand marketeer, develop a logo, and then I asked it to write a full marketing program. It put all three of them together in sub 10 minutes. I now had a brand, a name, a marketing program, you know, almost in minutes, and I was able to analyze it and think, oh, that's quite interesting. But I think what people forget here, we're on the edge of a revolution here. We're only on version 4. You know, we now have Google competing with their own version of ChatGPT called Bard. And I think where you're going to start seeing huge advances immediately is search engines, where, you know, Michael spoke about NLP, and you'll be able to talk to search engines. Like, instead of asking a question like, I saw someone on TV last night, what shoes were they wearing? You'll be able to talk to that in English, and hence the ridiculous Microsoft investment in OpenAI a couple of weeks ago. I think it was $10 billion. This is really...
Does it not strike you as reckless, though? I mean, think about what you were able to do. Think of all of the desk jobs and the development jobs and the college careers that went into what you would have had to do before AI. You would have spoken to humans. They would have done the work for you. They're gone, and you got everything done in 10 minutes.
I think it's going to make things more efficient. I think it's going to lead to millions and millions of jobs rather than lots of jobs. And it's going to make people, people are looking at 4-day weeks. I think it's going to make your work life much more efficient.
But anybody that does, say, no disrespect, but anyone say has a reasonably mundane job where it's very much, say, clerical and repetitive and admin and bureaucratic led, they're unemployable. Because that will be done.
But imagine making them much more efficient and making their lives much easier. If you have someone who's, spreadsheets that you can now tell Chat GPT or Bard, as Bard is released even more, you're asking it, hey, find that transaction that happened to do that, rather than this mundane thing of, I'm going to go through this line by line. I think it's going to lead to incredible efficiency.
It might, but what will happen? But what will happen to those that were physically, the human beings, employed to do those tasks? That's what I'm asking. I
think it will make them incredibly more efficient. I don't think it will eliminate them. I think it dramatically transforms the efficiencies of our economy.
But surely, look at employers down through history. They will find any opportunity to cut back in areas where they can save money. And laying off staff is always going to be one of them. So they're not going to be made more efficient. They're going to be made more unemployed.
But if you think about Luke, this makes his life easier, not makes him replaceable.
Until such time as artificial intelligence can think for itself in a sentient way, where you can actually have conversations. I won't even be here. There won't be broadcasters. All of this will be automated because the AI will have a brain.
I think the problem is sentient, or is coming from people who watch Terminator. I think that's probably decades away, at least a decade. But I think these are things that make the world a safer place, not a more dangerous place.
Okay, just hold on there. Micheál, did you want to jump in on any of that with regards to that this actually is not a risk? It's part of the revolution. We're just going to keep going with it.
I definitely agree with a lot of what Pat said there. Like, there's a lot of opportunity there to just automate process and make things a lot faster, and so I would be leaning much more towards the positive side. Obviously, there is a lot of negative press, but I do think it represents a big opportunity with technology.
But why then have the Italians, this question to both of you, I understand they have banned it, haven't they?
Yeah, so they banned it on the 30th of March. I think a lot of it might be driven around the GDPR regulations, that they're not necessarily sure that it complies fully with that. I think there was some issues around that they had, so they've gone ahead and banned it. Like, interestingly, then as a result, those searches for VPNs in Italy went up, by 450%.
What you're saying to people is that's a way of getting around it, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. VPN allows you to put in a fake location, essentially. So you could say you could be in Italy, but you could say that you're in the UK.
But doesn't Chat GPT make fakes out of people? They cheat by using it, particularly in an educational setting.
Yeah, I think the opportunity is there. No, there is apps that have also come out to be able to detect AI written content. So for example, there's a guy in the States in January created an app that can detect AI written content, and they've started to use that in some universities. So the opportunity is there, but then there's also the opportunity to kind of catch those things and find them out.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not quite sure. Are you saying it's a positive or a negative? Because they got the impression that this technological move will cost jobs in the future, particularly software, website development. You said anybody in accountancy, anybody involved in writing, anybody in journalistic skills, anything like that, gone. Do you still believe that?
I wouldn't say gone, but I do think it poses a risk, I suppose. And even my own industry, I work in search engine optimization. Also, the way that search engines have worked for 20 years is that they've displayed a list of results on websites that, people click through to. So that's that's what I do. I rank websites on Google, So with Pat's example there, if you're talking about chatbot like Bard or like ChatGPT in Bing, you're no longer going to be directed to a website. You're going to get your answers there. So there's 100% risk there. I suppose it just depends what way it evolves and what way we kind of respond to it.
Okay, Pat, is there any issues? Because I know you were talking recently as well about the possibility of scams, financial fraud, cyber attacks, fake terrorism alerts, things like that. All of that's in the mix too?
I think it's like anything else. We're going to bring the European Games now to Ireland, supposedly. I think there'll always be the chance for politicians to jump on this. I saw a junior minister yesterday talking about, this will dramatically change hacks, as if we're in a great position in Ireland to talk about hacks. I think there's the positivity far outweighs the negativity here. I think it's like everything else. You get out what you put in. And I think if people want to create scams, there's always going to be scams. There were scams 20 years ago, 50 years ago. I think what you've got here is something that will really bring humans forward. And I think it's something that everyone should be paying attention to. The college stuff, anyone sends it to me, if someone sends me something written by it, as a human and not the smartest guy in the world, I can instantly detect that it's been written by ChatGPT.
Why? How can you do that?
The language is very easy to see that it's been machine written. I think it's plenty far away for a while now that it's easy to detect. I can detect it quite easily, and I'm sure Michael can do the same. I got something last night that I knew was written by ChatGPT.
Can you pick up on something written by ChatGPT?
It sometimes mixes up its parties as well, third party, first party. Michal, I presume you'd see the same.
Yeah, the lack of flair, I suppose, that a human brings would be the kind of thing. So that's maybe a risk for the internet as well, that if all the content that's out there is created by an AI, then everything's going to be bland,
Did we freak out when Google came along, or when the internet itself came along? Were there warnings then?
I don't know if I'm old enough to remember now. But yeah, I suppose Google came out the early days when I was in my teens, I suppose.
Pat, do you recall any kind of warnings, or it's going to be catastrophic?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I remember plugging in the 64K, and we'd hear our little dial-up tone.
Yeah.
And people were panicking, hey, we're going to lose all our jobs, the computers are taking over, and if anybody in the last few weeks has read about the GDP of Ireland, Ireland is now driven by the computer industry.
But yet
when I was growing up, it was oil.
Yeah, but yet you're giving up your smartphones on weekends because clearly it's getting to you.
Yeah, I'm just too connected and too available, and I'm staring at a screen much more than I should, and I want to go back to living.
So what are you going to do at the weekend? You're going to be totally disconnected?
I bought a little Nokia 6300. There's a picture of it on my Instagram and Twitter. And I'm just going to forward my calls, and people need me, they can call me, like the old days.
Okay. So that's better quality of life then, is it? An example of how technology, although you're going backwards, Pat.
Yeah, I think we're all, I just think for me, I'm a little bit too connected. And I think there's too much swiping and too much glancing at screens. And I kind of I changed my life the last few years. I like to do a bit of training, a bit of outdoor stuff. And I'm going to go back and do a little bit more of that.
Do you both think that when, this continues to develop at the pace that it is, that human beings are going to have an awful lot more time on their hands then? Michal?
It'd be great, wouldn't it? If we'd all do with a bit more time.
You don't think we'd get bored with nothing to do?
I'm sure we'd find something to do.
Pat, you think we're going to have too much time on our hands?
I think, the way I think about it, Neil, our great-grandfathers were making horseshoes and working in, mines and factories and whatever. As you can see, we've advanced. And I think quality of life is going to change dramatically with these type of tools. And I think we're probably going to go back to living a bit more than staring at screens, and we'll have machines that work harder for us.
Until the machines take over.
That was the movie, Neil.
Yeah, so you think that will always be fiction, do you, Pat?
I think it'll always be fiction.
Okay.
I don't think Terminator is coming as quickly as we think.
Was another one called iRobot, I think, was there?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we'll have chat GPT buddies.
All right, well, maybe we'll do a movie review on Friday. But thank you both for taking the call for now. Appreciate it so much. Pat Phelan, and indeed head of Legacy head of search at Legacy Communications, Micheál Brennan. Your thoughts are welcome. Text 0868 104 106, particularly with regards to the evolution of artificial intelligence and how far it will go back, or is going, and the pace at which it's going. Back after the break.
Get it off your chest. Call Neil Prendeville.
I'm good. What's it been like the last few days or the last few weeks? What was the deal? What's natural and what feels right? Actually, talking about food, many people were thinking, oh, that's a fantastic thing, but not much engine oil in the engine. How loud some of them are. The f***s and robots will develop their own sentient brains and they will replace all humans.
What has happened is jobs have changed. So, when the...
But if it gets smarter and smarter, right? AI and automated software packages to run a lot. They run in all our banks. What happens when a robot gets a sentient emotion of its own?
Understand it in the same way that you and I do. If a few months, system that's filtering the CVs
happens already.
I've never seen.
And I know that chatbots exist, for instance. They're the most annoying thing.
Sure that the... And so AI is unique as a sort of a...
Professor Barry O'Sullivan, Director of the Insight Centre for Data Analytics, School of Computer Science and IT at UCC. The question I was going to ask had to do with robots. And no, you're okay. I mean, you might get an answer from it at a later stage. But I was just curious because when I was mentioning AI, I think it was this morning, I think I was chatting with Claire, and we ended up chatting about whether or not artificial intelligence, when we move to full robotics, would actually replace doctors, the diagnosis of doctors, nurses, and I suppose even more importantly, surgery, where surgery would be performed by robot. And if it were, would it mean that we would have absolutely no malpractice suits? We would have no people dying. We'd have no operations or surgery that went wrong because, does it take that risk out, I suppose? Anyway, if you came late this morning to the program, we created something, or at least my son did yesterday, where artificial intelligence built a promo for this program. I'm going to play it again now for the people who might have missed it earlier on. It's quite short. The instructions given were create a promo to say that Neil Prendeville will not be presenting the program anymore, or at least for now, and it was going to be replaced by a scarecrow from Passage West. So Chat GPT then built the promo script. Then he exported it to a different software package, and that got a voice together, and you could choose whatever voice you wanted, and it voiced the promo. And this was the result. This is all done completely 100% by artificial intelligence. So these aren't real voices, and nobody actually physically wrote anything.
Attention Red FM listeners. The Neil Prendeville Show is undergoing a permanent change from its usual award-winning programming. Cork's Red FM is excited to announce that Neil Prendeville will be taking a break from hosting The Neil Prendeville Show. And a new host will be taking the reins. Neil's replacement will be a scarecrow. A scarecrow who will be entertaining and informing listeners with his unique perspective on the world. While he may not be able to talk, this scarecrow has a lot to say, and he'll be using his actions and body language to communicate with listeners. The scarecrow is ready and excited for a change of pace from his field out in Passage West and into the Red FM studio. Tune in to the Neil Prendeville Show with a scarecrow as the host, starting from April 15th, every day from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Only on Cork's Red FM.
No, it's just a bit of fun, right? Two things spring to mind on that one. Firstly, the scarecrow wouldn't have to be paid. And secondly, some would suggest the scarecrow would possibly do a much better job. Your thoughts on that are welcome. Text 0868 104 106. John, good morning.
I'm just making up the course there as I'm listening to you there now, and on it is going to be save Prendeville's job. Save Prendeville's job.
Oh my God, we're moving it.
We're not going to have you replaced by a scarecrow under no circumstances.
Even if the scarecrow is from Passage West.
It doesn't matter where he's from.
Anyway, your thoughts on this briefly.
Well, it's frightening. Like, it's amazing. You had Pat Phelan on this morning, who's a very intelligent man, a very successful, brilliant businessman. But like, even he's opting out, like, which I found a bit ironic. I mean, he's all in favour of this smart technology going forward at a pace. Like, I mean, no one seems to be shouting stop. Yet he's taking time out himself because, by his own admission, like, he thinks, I mean, that, like, I mean, he's reacting too much, and he's never switched off. And look, the whole concept of the film, and it was mentioned this morning, the Terminator, that the machines will take over. Neil, they've already taken over up to a point, for the simple reason, there's people have smart meters in their homes now, electric smart meters, which are causing havoc with bills and everything. You have the tablets inside the house. You have the mobile phones, the computers. Nobody's talking to each other. Husbands and wives are out in the bar. He have his phone, she have her phone. They're both scrolling away. No one is talking to each other on the night out again. So the machines are slowly
Maybe machines will give people opportunities to take a step back then, where they will be having a better quality of living and talking more.
Well, I just think it's frightening because it's just running. Look, I have no problem as regards the medical side of it and robotics, and there are robots now that can actually perform operations, possibly maybe even better than some surgeons. Obviously, the surgeon has to be in the room and it has to be programmed, the whole lot. But I mean, I would just worry overall, like, this is going to put millions upon millions of people out of work. Like, there'll be no need for call centres anymore. The offices, like, I mean, it will be run totally animated completely, or automated. And I just think, I mean, it's frightening. Like, I mean.
But what will all of the people who normally would do these jobs, I suppose, end up having to retrain to do? What jobs will then be available?
Well, you see, this is the problem. What are they going to be actually doing? Like, I mean, you see what's happening in China at the moment. Like, I mean, they're probably the leaders in the world at the moment as regards this technology, as regards face recognition and everything. No, I mean...
Warehouses would go. People working when warehouse staff would go, wouldn't they? That's all automated. And I suppose it got somewhere automated when machinery came along. But that would be the end of that. Industries like that, right?
Of course, yeah, and people on about privacy. Like, I mean, if I leave my house and if I use public transport, I'm on a bus in the camera. I get off that, I'm on cameras in the street. I went to a shop and I'm on multiple cameras.
I'm a big fan of cameras, though. It just keeps people safer. Why would we have a problem?
Oh, yeah. No, but I'm only saying, like, I mean, the way things have changed, like, I mean, if I can get a time machine, I go back to 1970. The music was better. The face of life was better. I just love to go back.
But anytime people make comments like that, it enrages others, saying, you know, that's dinosaur thinking. You got to move with the time. They said the same when the television came along. They said the same when the phone came along. You know.
Well, you see, the people that will say that, Neil, are the people that didn't live through the 70s, you say. Simple as that.
But we look back at things like that look with rose-tinted glasses. I mean, look at all of the things you can do now, the communication you have, the information that's available to, the places you can go. You couldn't do any of that in the 70s, you know. You were completely limited. It was a much more less interesting place to be.
Like, if I wanted to talk to my buddy, I'd actually have to call to his house. Like, if you say sending a bloody a text message to him, no, he's sending it to me. There was more communication between people on their nights out or whatever. They weren't using smartphones because they didn't exist.
Okay, but forget about smartphones. What about panic alerts, for instance? A panic alert to an elderly person who could be sitting down, having fallen down the stairs and be there for 12 or 15 hours, uncontactable. Now we've technology that allows them to have a little medallion around their neck, a little panic button, which calls the emergency services, calls a son, calls a daughter. That's all to do with technology.
Well, you're quite right here, as regards, like, and again, that borders on the medical side of it. But I just think, like, I mean, it's at a frightening. I know Elon Musk, and a few more others have said it should be parked for a while. I think quite a while. I think it's just racing along too much, and the whole concept of the film, the Terminator, the machines will take over. Like, I mean, and this continues. Like, I mean, the human being will just be wandering around in circles. Like, I mean, and the machines will be taken over
with nothing to do. Who's the master? And who's the puppet? Yeah,
and you will have a bloody scarecrow presenting the program, so you want to watch your back from the
Can't stay here forever, I suppose. Text 0868 104 106. Back after the break.
Talk to Neil Prendeville now. 0818 104 106. Cork's Red FM.
Sorry about that, Aisling. I've no idea what happened there. You all right?